And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Thursday, November 30th. I am Josh Engleman. I'm joined by Adam Scherer. We're brought to you by Underdog. 9-game slate ahead of us. Should be 8, but DraftKings just continues to give us this 10 o'clock game, even though we don't need it. I'm going to keep bitching about it until they make that change. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. Adam, how is your day going?
It's good. Not a lot's happened since this morning, but it's going well.
Yeah, I've basically just been in this chair since the moment that we ended that show anyway, so I don't even feel like we've stopped.
Yeah, pretty much the same for me.
I did what, like 3 straight hours worth of calls after we did that, plus contenders videos and prize picks. It's just, I haven't left. I'm just here. I've got this, building lineups for an hour, running it right into building lineups for NFL. It's going to be a fun night. Lots of good DFS to be had. You ready to break this down?
Yeah.
Yeah. Joseph, big dub today. Whooped their ass, won the group with a game in hand. Good stuff.
Liverpool.
Good stuff.
I'm assuming.
Yeah. Yes. We beat.
I assumed that was what you were losing your mind over during the call.
Yeah. They can't be making me go to calls during the middle of Liverpool matches. What am I supposed to do there? Pay attention? Come on. Portland Trailblazers. 12-point dogs in Cleveland, 219 total. This is basically tied for the lowest total on the slate. We have 4% ownership coming into Malcolm Brogdon, 9 on FanDuel. Those are the 2 high marks across both sites. In terms of Portland, no Anthony Simons, no Robert Williams, so nothing new there. Do you like anything here from Portland? Because I think Brogdon and Ayton are about it.
Yeah, that's pretty much all that I've been getting to today. I'm running a new set of lineups now, but had a random Ayton in like a lineup generator video where it was just like, oh well, yeah, I'll use a 2% owned center here. That's fine, but it's not like it's a good spot. He's not going to stand out. Same goes for Brogdon, where I was getting to him this morning, and I understand the reason is that he's 4% owned, 7% chance of being optimal. He's good enough. He can just give you a good game at no ownership, but not a spot where I'm really looking to get to him at 8,100. There's plenty of good plays on this slate. So there's nothing that stands out to me. I do think it's most likely Brogdon and Ayton if I do get to this team.
Yeah, I got 2 shares of Brogdon, and that is it. It's really hard. This is a difficult matchup. Cleveland's 4th in defensive rating right now. They're running headlong into a not fun team to go up against. It's not exactly a track meet type game. They're 12-point dogs in a 219 total. So ultra low implied total. Larry Nance, by the way, expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he's out for a minute or two. Yeah, I don't really see the path to Portland. This is a real tough sell on a 9-gamer.
Yeah, and the other problem too, it's not just that Cleveland is not an appealing matchup and all of that. It's the other games on the slate. Like if this game were on yesterday's slate or the day before, I think there would be more interest in Portland just because you had a lot of just unappealing teams as a whole. But here you have Atlanta, San Antonio, you have Charlotte playing, so that's going to be an appealing game to target, or at least has the potential to be. Pricing there is kind of tough, but Indiana's playing. The Pistons are playing. Like there's Utah's playing. Minnesota's shorthanded without Edwards. So like there's actual teams that just look good top to bottom today, and it makes Portland look even worse relatively.
On the other side, we've got the Cleveland Cavaliers. They have basically everybody that's normally available. Dean Wade's been out for a couple games, but he is still out. 11% ownership to Garland, 11% to Mobley, just a tiny amount, but basically 5 to Mitchell and Allen. I don't have much here of Cleveland, but I am at 11% of Donovan Mitchell. I think it's just a situation where if you want to grab any one of those 4 main guys, they will absolutely work in any lineup you want to build. I don't think any of them just immediately jump out.
Yeah, that's how I see it. Cleveland is also a team that sort of gets hurt by what I was just saying, the fact that we have so many track meet type teams on the slate. Portland's not a bad matchup, but they're not Atlanta. They're not Indiana. And so Cleveland is, I think, certainly the more appealing side of this game because they are better. They have the better matchup. They have the 115 implied total instead of 104, but it's still 10% ownership, give or take, coming into Mobley and Garland, 7% to Allen, 6% to Mitchell. Any of those guys are fine, but they also all have optimal percentages between 6 and 10%. The field's not getting them wrong or anything. They're just secondary plays that certainly have nice ceilings, but you're going to have trouble building around them, I think.
Anything else you want to touch on here for Cleveland?
No.
The Charlotte Hornets are 8.5-point underdogs in Brooklyn, 224 total. Now for the Hornets, 13% ownership on DraftKings coming into Brandon Miller, 14 on FanDuel for him. We're also seeing 22 to Gordon Hayward on FanDuel and 18 to Miles Bridges on FanDuel. The interesting thing for Brandon Miller being the highest owned guy on DK is that he is questionable for today. We also still don't have Nick Richards. I've got 21% of Brandon Miller, 5,800 shooting guard, small forward. If he is in, that price and position is always going to work. I'm also 2x the field on the 7% owned Terry Rozier, who I think just kind of looks interesting stepping into that LaMelo role without increasing the price. You getting to anything from Charlotte?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you as far as Rozier looking pretty appealing. The price tag on Miller not being bad. Looking now to see what I'm actually getting to. But this morning I was getting a good amount of Rozier. Now I'm not getting a lot of anything. I have 10% Brandon Miller. That's leading the way. Okay. Don't mind that 5,800 shooting guard, small forward, like you said. Yeah. I'm pretty much, I think, just around the field on these guys now. Getting 6% Rozier, 5% Bridges, 3% Hayward, very small amounts of PJ Washington and Mark Williams. The field's pretty much doing the same thing there. On FanDuel, Gordon Hayward's going to look a lot better. He's like 5,600, 5,700. But yeah, I think they look fine. It's just still a very difficult team to prioritize. 31 games, I believe it was, without LaMelo since the start of last year for Rozier. 1.07 DraftKings points per minute in about 36 minutes per game. Obviously, Miles Bridges did not play last year, so what impact he has is kind of difficult to quantify, but it's not a minimal one.
No, it's not. Yeah, I wish I had a little bit more of Bridges. I thought that I would, but right now it's basically just 2xing Rozier and a little bit over the field for Brandon Miller, but I'm fine with that. Happy to get to anything really here. Yeah, very different scenario on FanDuel. Like Gordon Hayward for 5,600, shooting guard, small forward. That's a great play on FanDuel.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I just went back and checked the Portland-Cleveland game. Nothing interesting to say for me there. Just getting small amounts of a bunch of guys.
As expected.
Yep.
Okay, this guy's just got to be. I think you're right now. Brad is just a straight troll in chat. I think I've bit long enough.
Yeah.
Let's go to the Brooklyn side. 6% ownership coming into Cam Johnson, 19 to Nick Claxton. I have 51, but if I'm ever going to get 51% of somebody, 26th ranked Charlotte defense, maybe it is Nick Claxton on a day like today. Feels aggressive, though. Feels aggressive. What are you doing with Brooklyn?
I'm getting 27% Claxton. That's the guy that I'm getting to from Brooklyn, which I'm happy about. This morning, I wasn't getting to him, and I didn't really understand why. 6,300 is a good price tag. The matchup's great. Very happy to be getting to 26, 27% now. He's getting 19% ownership, 13% chance of being optimal. Just looks like a good play. The rest of Brooklyn, I think you're kind of back into the same category as the other teams we've talked about so far. There's obviously nothing wrong if Mikal Bridges or Dinwiddie or Cameron Johnson show up in your lineups, but their prices have come up. Cam Thomas is back, which is a very high usage guy for this team. So it's tough to get to much of anything else. I have 4% Cam Johnson, 3% Bridges, 1% Dinwiddie. The very clear priority for me from Brooklyn is Claxton.
Yeah. I have so much. But look, 1.21 fantasy points per minute for Claxton over the last 30 days, which is basically the full season. I have him projected in this matchup for 1.21 fantasy points. It's spot on his rates for the year. Went 29 minutes. This matchup is obviously a positive matchup in terms of pace for Brooklyn, for a defensive matchup. I guess I don't hate it too much. It's just, it always makes me a little nervous to just put all the eggs in one basket of a center. But hey, sometimes it's Jared Allen and it works.
Yep. That it does.
But after that, one share of Cam Johnson, one share of Mikal Bridges. Cam Thomas being back for this team is really complicating matters.
Agreed.
And Royce O'Neal, questionable. Just, do you see that having any impact if he's out?
Probably not from a real DFS standpoint. Like Finney Smith's already 5,200. Lonnie Walker's already 5,900. Even Watford's at 4K.
Yeah.
I don't really see anything where, because like none of these guys are great point per minute plays, especially when you have Bridges, Dinwiddie, and Thomas active. That's where, and Cam Johnson active. Like that's where the offense is running through. So I don't think there's anybody on this slate that would really start to stand out.
Alrighty. Well, schedule for the rest of the day. We still have 2 more live shows tonight. Live Before Lock NBA edition coming up at 6 o'clock. Adam and I will take you all the way up until 6. Hit that like button, by the way. We'll take you up to 6. NBA Live Before Lock will take you all the way to 7. And then we're not done. 7:15, NFL Showdown Live Before Lock. Seahawks Cowboys tonight. Make sure you're playing some NFL Showdown. And then make sure you're using our avatar. Go to stokastic.com/avatar. Grab our logo. Load it up on DraftKings and FanDuel. No reason to not do this. Costs you nothing. You don't have to be subbed to the site right now. But if you win and you tweet, or if you finish in the top 3 of a contest with at least 5,000 people, and you tweet that result to @StokasticHOF, you get 1 month of any Stokastic package you're looking for. It's a $200 value. This costs you nothing to do and can bring you into the ecosystem just by picking up a dub. It helps us both out. It's a win-win situation. We hope you want to do it. Click the link in chat or go to stokastic.com/avatar. What in the world? Indiana Pacers, 2.5-point dogs in Miami, 238 total. We did not get the clarity we were looking for. Isaiah Jackson, questionable. TJ McConnell, questionable. Bam Adebayo, Haywood Highsmith, Duncan Robinson, all available. Jimmy Butler, still questionable. On the Indiana side, 5% ownership coming into Isaiah Jackson. No ownership coming in anywhere else on the DraftKings side. 27% coming into Buddy Hield on FanDuel. I've got 23% of Isaiah Jackson right now. I really don't know how we're going to handle this one. I don't really know what to do with it.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised I'm not getting more Isaiah Jackson right now. I'm pretty much with the field. I have 7%. He's projected for 5. So that's a huge change from this morning, which I'm perfectly fine with. I mean, there's plenty of good centers on this slate. If he plays, he's still just the backup to Miles Turner. And, he is a good point per minute guy, but he is also up to 4K center only. So I think he's a good value, but basically just a little over the field on him right now. I'm not getting the Indiana much. 5% Bruce Brown, 3% Nesmith. I have 1 out of 150 lineups right now with Halliburton and with Mathurin. I don't have any Miles Turner right now, which I kind of like the idea of Miles Turner, but he's 7,400 on a slate where you do have cheaper centers. You also have like Anthony Davis, for example. So I think he is very difficult to get to in this matchup, but I sort of like the idea just from the sense of you and I talked about it this morning. I think if Jackson's in, you probably project this to be like 29 minutes for Turner, 19 for Jackson, somewhere in there. But there is the chance that it just becomes 36 minutes of Miles Turner and 12 of Jackson with Jalen Smith out. So there is, at least room for more playing time for Turner. And then if Jackson is out, I do think you're probably getting more minutes from Miles Turner. But right now with Jackson projected in, I'm just finding it very difficult to get to Turner, even though the idea of him is interesting to me.
Yeah, I thought I would get to some Turner as well. I don't have any right now. That will change. If we get Isaiah Jackson early enough, I'll probably be able to bump him. Ramel hit us with a super chat. Cam Johnson, Cam Thomas, or DeAndre Hunter on FanDuel. I think I can confidently say it's not Cam Thomas. So it would be Cam Johnson or DeAndre Hunter.
So Hunter's 5,500. We have him projected for 27.2. Cameron Johnson is 6,400, projected for like 29. I mean, if the options are just leaving 800 on the table, like I would play Cameron Johnson, but DeAndre Hunter is close enough. You can probably upgrade something else. So I guess my answer is Hunter.
Yeah, that works for me. Cam Thomas is not going to be that guy for me. Anything else for Indiana? I don't think we have it.
No, just, unappealing matchup against Miami. Decent implied total. They're at like 118, but prices are just pretty expensive.
And then we get to Miami. 11% ownership coming into Jimmy Butler, 9 to Bam Adebayo. Part of me really hopes that he gets ruled in at 701. That would be Jimmy, because there's no ownership coming into this team. I only really have Jimmy, but I have 45% of him, and I am happy about that if he's playing.
Yeah, I mean, he's my highest owned guy from Miami right now. I have 16%, so I am closer to the field than you, but still over. But yeah, like if he's in, he looks good. It's a great matchup against Indiana. He's 8,300, small forward, power forward. Obviously, he's a good fantasy producer. I assume if he plays, he's just playing close to actual minutes. So I like getting there at this ownership if he's in. Bam at 9,500 in this spot is certainly appealing. It's just tough to pay that salary where he's center only, as he should be. So I'm only getting to about 5% of him, 7% of Kyle Lowry, small amounts of Caleb Martin and Duncan Robinson. But Butler to me is the guy I'm getting to. Certainly would like to get the Bam. If you have lineups that you like that have Bam, great. I think he's a very good play. He's just difficult to get to at that price point for me.
Yeah, I love Jimmy today. I think he might actually just be my favorite play of anybody if he's able to, just because of how great it is to face Indiana. So I'm sure it's a Kevin Love day or something. Oh no, I did it again. I just talked that one into existence.
Yeah.
Here it comes. We already know how this plays out. Yeah, 45% Butler, and I hope that continues. By the way, 3% of Bam, 2% of Lowry, 2% of Jaime Jaquez. There's just nothing else here.
Yep, same page.
Hell of a game, though. Speaking of hell of a games, the 14.5-point underdog Detroit Pistons are going to try to pick up a dub in New York with a 218 total. This one you'd be hard pressed to find a worse matchup for Detroit. They are unowned from top to bottom, straight zero, couple 1%ers on the FanDuel side, but just really, really, really rough. There was a brief moment where Bojan Bogdanovic was questionable for this game. I would have given anything to get him to play for today so we could start to see some sort of rotations and who gets trimmed. He is now out, but coming back imminently. I would be shocked if I end up with a share of Detroit.
Right now, I don't have a single Piston in a single lineup. If I had to play one, I guess it could be any of the starters. They're all sort of equally disgusting looking, but Jalen Duren's come up to 7,200. Cade's up to 88. Ivy's up to 62. Thompson's up to 69. Stewart's at 5,800. Even the shitty bench guys are expensive now. Like Livers is up to 4,400. I have no idea where you go on this team.
Sasser's 5,200 still.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Burks is 46. Like,
yeah,
I have no idea where you go on this team.
And as I mentioned earlier today, but I'll mention again, the New York Knicks are 5th in defensive rating and dead last in the league in pace. It doesn't get much worse than this. They're the inverse of the Pacers. Now, the opposite side of this game is interesting. 26% ownership coming into Emmanuel Quickly, 17 to Mitchell Robinson, 5 to 10 for Brunson, Hart, Randall, Barrett. I'm getting all of these guys in like 5% of lineups, but I am miles away from the Quickly ownership and the Mitchell Robinson ownership right now.
Yeah, Quickly's my highest owned guy, but I'm still not getting to that 26% mark. We have him with a 17.8% chance of being optimal. I have 17.3%. Always makes me feel good when it's like, oh man, the field's really getting to this guy and I'm not getting as much. And then I see that I'm just like nailing the optimal percentage. So perfectly fine with that. Like he's a good play, but does look like he's going a bit over owned in tournaments. 5,300 point guard, shooting guard. He looks fine. And like I said, I'm getting 17%. He's my highest owned Nick. Next for me is Josh Hart. He's only getting 6% ownership. I have 12, 4,500. Nice price tag. Played 30 minutes last game, closed that one against Charlotte. Good matchup. I don't mind taking some shots there at only 6% owned. 5% Mitchell Robinson for me. Fields at 17. So he's another one where that doesn't mean that he's a bad player. I think he's a bad play. It's just that I'm finding it easy to find other centers that make my lineups as a whole look better. I already mentioned I'm getting over on Claxton. I don't know what other centers I'm getting to, but I assume that so like
don't spoil it.
Yeah, like I'm getting to other centers in this price range or at least like a little bit more expensive. I think it's a very like 2v2 pivotable spot where kind of like I thought Ivy was yesterday. I still had 25% Ivy, but even if there's not necessarily like another $5,200 or $5,400 center that looks like Robinson, there's so many guys in that upper 5K, low 6K range where you just drop somebody $800 somewhere else in your lineup and then upgrade to a lower owned guy that's a little bit more expensive. It's just really easy to find guys like that away from Robinson. So I think that's why I'm not getting as much as the field. It's just that it's one of the easier spots for me to just like 2v2 or 3v3 away from it.
What do you think's causing this Quickly ownership? Just matchup? Yeah.
I mean, because the matchup's part of the projection, but
yeah,
I think it's just a really useful price point.
Yeah. You just like, it's so rare to see someone just like get this sizable ownership chunk without anything really actionable happening from the Knicks. It's not, nobody's out. It's just like,
well, I think it's also just a function of how tight DraftKings pricing is.
Yeah.
We saw it. I don't remember who we were talking about, but it was the same conversation a week or two ago. It's just that because DraftKings has been so aggressive on their pricing, anytime somebody is slightly underpriced, they're just going to really stand out because most guys are overpriced. There's so many guys on DraftKings where it's like, I don't even know how you play that guy at that price, that when you get somebody like Quickly where it's like, oh, well, he's, 3% cheaper than he should be, it just shows up everywhere.
And Brad Clayton, man, he just keeps getting me. I just keep wanting to deal with it, and then I just gotta skip it. I gotta skip it. No chance I'm going to answer that one from Jordan Klein from the team member for 32 months. I wish he wasn't a team member for any months moving forward, but that's for us. Is supposed to be like funny if I say it? Hart, Top, and Hardenwood. What am I missing here? Poor joke, Jordan. Poor joke. Milwaukee Bucks 8.5-point favorites in Chicago, 229 total. On the Milwaukee end, we are missing Pat Connaughton. We are also missing Jay Crowder, who's been out. 8% ownership to Brook Lopez, 8% ownership to Damian Lillard, minimal ownership across the board, single digits on both sites. You getting any Milwaukee? Because I am essentially not.
Yeah, nothing that's interesting or notable. Just kind of getting 5-7% of several guys. Beasley is showing up the most for me, which whatever. He's 5,200 shooting guard, 3% owned, 5% chance of being optimal. I have 7%. It's just him just randomly landing in lineups here or there. That can become 2% by lock. And even without anything changing, it just doesn't matter. Chris Middleton, 5% owned. I have 6%. I have 5% Giannis, 3% Lopez. I have a lineup with Dame. Just a really difficult team to get to because they are pretty much correctly priced across the board. Middleton played like 23 minutes last game. We don't know how much he'll play today. If you do play him, obviously you're hoping he gets to like 26, 27. But considering that as soon as they started to ramp him up, he then left a game in the middle, I assume that they are back to being more cautious with him. So it's just really tough to get to anything.
The Chicago side is still a gigantic question mark, as evidenced by the giant question marks next to Alex Caruso, DeMar DeRozan, and Zach LaVine. 10% ownership coming into Drummond, 11 to Zach LaVine. I am over the field on both of these guys, and if Zach LaVine plays, he got his small forward back, $7,400 shooting guard small forward. I have 36%. It's position over everything for this one.
Yeah, that small forward piece is so big for him, especially because it didn't come with a price increase. Sometimes you'll see the small forward come back, but then suddenly he's 8K. That didn't happen. So him at 7,400 against a Milwaukee team that has struggled defensively this year. He's my highest owned guy from Chicago. I have 20% right now. If he gets rolled out after lock, then clearly I will be late swapping. But if he gets rolled out and the other guys are in, there's going to be stuff to get to from Chicago because DeRozan's going to look better. Vooch will look better. Caruso and White will look at least somewhat better. If multiple guys get ruled out, then you're opening up even more stuff. So I'm not overly concerned about any of that. Like what happens if LaVine gets ruled out? If he's in though, he just looks like a good play here. I'm not getting to a lot of anybody else. I have 7% Drummond as my next highest owned guy. $3,400 backup center. The value piece of it is nice, but I think he's just like Isaiah Jackson for me, where the problem that you run into is he's a good point per dollar projection, but it's just so hard for him to put up the raw points that you probably need from a roster spot, especially a center spot where you know that there's 5, 6, 6,500, 5K, 6K, 6,500 guys that are capable of going for 40, 45, 50 DraftKings points and can just bury you, even if you get that good, I feel good about myself. Andre Drummond went for 8X and I played a lot of him. And it just turns into like, good, you're drawing absolutely dead because Anthony Davis went for 65 and Claxton went for 50, something like that. So I think that's kind of what's just keeping me from getting to too much for those guys.
I do think it's a good day for it, though. We don't have Jokic. We don't have Embiid. There's no Domantas Sabonis. It really is just like AD and Bam at the top, which is a relatively thin, ultra high level center slate. So I do think that is like a slight change to it, but I don't disagree with what you're saying. But this one is a little bit more unique.
I agree with you for sure. The mid-range is pretty strong, though. I mean, Ayton is in a tough spot, but he can still have a big game. Jared Allen can certainly go nuts here. You have Miles Turner. You already mentioned Bam. Mitchell Robinson is cheap and can certainly go, 7, 8X at that price.
Yeah.
Mark Williams and Claxton both have high ceilings. Claxton, the easier one to get to. You have Gobert, you have Davis. There's still a lot of centers that Zach Collins, Capella, there's a lot of mid-range centers that, and I think that's almost more problematic because when it's Jokic or Embiid or whoever at the top, you're talking about like vastly different roster constructions to get to them. When it's these mid-range guys, it's still a different roster construction, but you're talking more about, you build a lineup with Drummond, and then you're just dropping like some 10K guy to a 6K guy, and you're upgrading to Capella, and that still looks like a really good lineup.
Sure. I'd love to dig in more on Chicago, but like, we just have, and we're probably not gonna know this information at lock, but everything changes based on the results of DeRozan Q tag, LaVine Q tag, Caruso Q tag. Like, LaVine might be like a smash if DeRozan and Caruso are out.
Right.
DeRozan might be a smash if LaVine is out. Like, this can go so many different directions. If Caruso is out, like Patrick Williams is up to 5K, but you can work him into lineups at that point. You can feel a little bit more confident about those minutes. Everything changes here.
Oh, and then there's the nightmare scenario where Caruso, DeRozan, and LaVine are all out, and suddenly you're just playing a bunch of Kobe White and Vooch and Dosunmu and Javon Carter and garbage from Chicago.
Oof. Jeremy Sohan available to play.
McDermott doubtful. Give us Wemby.
Nope, my wrist didn't keep vibrating.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit about McDermott?
Right. Yeah, I
feel like he's 900 years old.
I saw doubtful and was just like, damn it, like assuming it was going to be Wemby, but nothing on Wemby.
McDermott's only 31.
Yeah, we had this conversation like a week ago.
I know. It's just every day it gets crazier to me. Anything else for the Bulls?
No, if everybody's in, I think LaVine's a very good play. If and when guys start getting ruled out, the whole team's just going to start looking better.
Really wish that Wemby one would have come in. Considering he's my most exposed player right now, I really need that Wemby news. Instead, we're going to talk about Underdog Fantasy.
Oh, shit.
You don't want to do that?
No, I don't have nearly as much Wemby as I did earlier.
Yeah. Well, you should have a little bit more Underdog Fantasy love because, one, you could double your first deposit up to $100, put in 100, get another 100, and you could hit basically every sort of thing you want to do in the sports landscape. Pick'em contests if you're in a non-legal sports betting state. 20x your money if you can. Daily fantasy contests with large field GPPs. Best ball, which you've clearly heard about from time to time. Playoff drafts when they come around. The free square for tonight at Underdog, it's a lock button stuff. 0.5 yards for Dak Prescott. If he doesn't get that, I think we'll all be pretty happy that something bad happened to the Cowboys. But other than that, that's just going to pick up a dub for you. Add that to whatever else you're doing, and it's just going to make it easier for you to make a little bit more money. Now, you got to be 18 or over for sure, but this is the one-stop shop. You want to get in the door here. If you're concerned with your play, if you've got a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. But what you really need to do is click the link in the description or in chat and sign up for Underdog. What else we got? Yeah, Nance is not the backup to the backup. Well, oh my God, I gotta stop reading chat. I really do. It's I wish I could like get hypnotized to not see it. Like the way they get
I don't
people
struggle with those.
smoking.
Like they're just so bad and obviously wrong. They don't even like catch my attention.
I just get so much satisfaction out of telling him he's wrong. Which is not the way to operate in life, but it does feel real. It's like it's just like that brief little pick-me-up. It goes away really quick.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get it. You have to do small things to get wins when you're not getting actual wins.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, did win 2 days ago.
I mean, it wasn't even 5 figures.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. Huh. Oh, I cannot. I got to pick up.
You would have won
like
3 days ago if you had played 150, though.
You know what's really funny? I put that out of my brain.
I can tell by the way your head dropped.
I just totally forgot about it. Oh, boy. Utah Jazz are 11-point dogs in Minnesota, 221 total. The highest owned guy for the Utah Jazz right now is 2% owned, Walker Kessler. But we do have Jordan Clarkson with a Q tag and Kelly Olynyk with a Q tag. Can we open anything up here for the Jazz if this breaks?
Potentially. I mean, so like right now, I think they're pretty close to impossible to get to.
Yeah.
So if Clarkson's out, George is going to look better. Dunn's already out. Sexton at 5,500. Horton Tucker's already at 5,700. Like that's kind of the problem is they're not priced for Clarkson to be out, but they're not priced as backups.
No.
They certainly become more playable than they are right now.
Yeah. It's Sexton, right? Like that's got to be the guy. With no marketing, they need. That's the only real offensive player.
Yeah. If Clarkson's out, you would think that's where they go.
I don't know. I don't know how it's not him.
It would be because like Agbaji's their spot start guy in a lot of cases, but if it's Clarkson out with Markin already out, that's like a wild strategy to try and score points.
Yeah. Like you can't really rely on a rookie point guard like that. Kessler, not the offensive guy that you're looking for. You could obviously increase Collins to a degree, but everybody else here that we're going to name is like defense first at a minimum.
Like it could be Horton
Sexton
Tucker.
Couldn't be more offense first.
Right. It could be Horton Tucker instead if they prefer that. But
God, they are just there. I mean, there's just zero spacing in that team if they do that.
Yeah.
I mean, look, ultimately, we got to give 32 minutes to somebody. I think, you're going to 24 at a minimum on Sexton at that point, if not more. Would you assume if Clarkson's out, do you assume Sexton starts?
That's what we were just talking about, I thought.
Well, I was just talking like in general. Well, like, I think Taylor Horton Tucker goes from fully unplayable to just slightly interesting if Clarkson's out by default. But if Sexton is starting and you can give him a 28-minute projection, like what does that end up looking like?
Yeah, if Sexton's starting, he ends up looking like a pretty good play. Probably he's still, I don't think, a slam dunk. We're just going to play 60% Colin Sexton today or anything like that at 5,500. It's still a tough matchup, but if he's in the starting lineup, he's at least getting first crack at playing well and producing. And it's also telling you that Hardy is trying to give him those minutes because that's what makes it so tough with Utah right now is Hardy's been so upset with the way this team plays from an effort standpoint and a production standpoint that we saw it the other day where he essentially just started his third string with the first string out because he was just like, I already know this second string isn't doing what I want them to do. Let me just play the other guys. So and in that game, Sexton was one of the second string guys that didn't start, but he did play really well down the stretch. He did close. So if he's in the starting lineup here in place of Clarkson, that's somewhat of a signal of confidence that he's at least getting the opportunity. He's not starting the game in the doghouse. He might play his way into it, but he would be a good value. I don't think that he would end up being one of those just jam him in everywhere type values.
Yeah. 28 minutes on the 25th in the game that Markkanen and Clarkson both missed. Even if you just want to say 28 minutes for a guy that's, let's just say a fantasy point per minute, he's 5,500. That's 5.1x his salary. He becomes a guy, a 15, 20% owned type dude if you had him right now. Point guard, shooting guard as well.
Yeah. Like, and for this game, we have him projected at 0.96 DraftKings points per minute. So not too far below the fantasy point per minute.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't help that this is a
Are you there? Am I frozen or is Josh frozen? Yeah, that's amazing. But yeah, so I don't know what he was saying because I wasn't listening, but if Clarkson's out
defensively, for have a 29th ranked defense in the Utah Jazz.
How is he? Is he just like on a delay in the room now?
Jordan, is this me or him?
It was you,
Stop
but
pointing.
You're back now.
Okay.
You're back now.
So what happened?
I started to talk and then whatever you said like 2 minutes ago started cutting me off. And so I stopped again. So nothing happened.
Nothing happened at all?
No.
Did you not just tell me that Jordan Clarkson is out?
No. I said
that came through my ears.
I said if Clarkson is out, I started to just pick up with where you were. And I said if Clarkson is out, and then whatever you had been saying started coming back through. And so I stopped talking again.
Oh, yeah. I went straight into like the Minnesota spiel.
Oh, No, didn't hear any of that.
Okay. Man, that was interesting. I had no idea what was going on there. Fun stuff, folks. Let's talk Minnesota now.
Oh, yeah, and your
pseudo-main
freeze frame was fantastic.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
How bad? What was I doing?
What were you doing?
Yeah. Jordan, go live. Get the producer cam up for that one. Let everybody know what it looked like I was doing.
Yeah, I mean,
Nothing
I think
wrong with
it
that,
out from
man.
reading chat too.
Yeah. Is it that bad? Somebody grab the screenshot and tweet it at me. Oh, man. Well, anyway. I'm guessing that is what I need. Wait, Jordan, are you sending that to me, right? I got to look at it before we do anything. Oh, Emac sending it to me. Oh, that's not bad. That's not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Never mind. Does it normally look worse? Like,
I thought it would be wider. Oh, man. Anyway, 20% ownership coming into Karl Anthony Towns, 30 to Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 35 to Troy Brown, 40 to Naz Reid, and 60 to Kyle Anderson. I don't know. Did I do it again?
No, chat's just catching up.
Anthony Edwards doubtful. Jaden McDaniels out. The floor is yours here. What are we doing with this Minnesota team?
Playing a lot of them. So this team does look different for me than it did this morning in that I'm just getting to the popular pieces as well. Kyle Anderson's projected for 63% ownership right now, 32% chance of being optimal. I have 63%, so I'm right with the field. 4,500, good point per minute guy, can take on a bigger role in a variety of ways, which is really, really nice with Edwards out. Anderson can take on a bigger playmaking role. He can take on a bigger scoring role, and he's just still cheap, and he's good at everything. So it's very easy. I love getting to cheap guys like that because kind of no matter how the game goes, no matter what lineups Minnesota starts going with, Kyle Anderson can fit into them. So
yeah,
it makes him pretty easy to get to. I'm getting the 40% Naz Reid, who is also 40% owned, 4,500 power forward, good point per minute guy. Should probably get more minutes here. There's a lot of them to soak up. So I'm getting to both of them a ton. Shake Milton is interesting to me. 9% owned at 3,700, getting 11% ownership. I'm at 16%, so I'm 2x the field there. It's not a play that I'm confident in. I just like that he's sub 10% owned, and we haven't seen what this Minnesota rotation is going to look like. It's a good matchup. He's a good enough fantasy producer when he's on the floor, so I don't mind getting there. I'm getting the 16% Troy Brown as well. He's 36% owned, so this is something that I think did change since this morning, at least a little bit. This morning, I think Brown was down around like 20, 22%, something like that. And Anderson was at like 70. And so I was playing a bunch of Troy Brown and not a lot of Kyle Anderson. Kyle Anderson's ownership's come down a little bit to 63. Troy Brown's up to like 36 now. So now I am playing, even with the field on Anderson, I'm playing less Troy Brown. Brown, not as good a point per minute guy. I'm not super confident in his minutes. I don't think he's like a bad point per dollar value, especially shooting guard, small forward eligible, but I am getting less of him now by a lot than Kyle Anderson. Karl Anthony Towns getting 17% ownership. That's down quite a bit from this morning. I'm still at about 14 to 15%. He's been a 1.43 DraftKings point per minute guy without Anthony Edwards on the floor this year. Usage rate gets up to about 36.5%. Certainly a very, very good play. If Wemby gets ruled out, Karl Anthony Towns looks even better because Wemby is very comparable to Towns in terms of projection. And I don't think that you should be taking like a massive Towns over Wemby stand. But if Wemby is out, all of that can just start going into Karl Anthony Towns, and he's going to look really good. I'm getting to 8% or 9% Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Fields at 29% on him. We have him with a 12% chance of being optimal. So kind of interesting to me where I'm with the field on Anderson. I'm with the field on Reid. I'm pretty heavily under the field on Troy Brown and Nickeil Alexander-Walker when it comes to value here.
I have 18% Towns, dead with the field. 69 of slow-mo, basically dead with the field. 36 of Naz Reid with the field. 47 of Nickeil Alexander-Walker over the field. And then 30 of Troy Brown. 5 of Gobert. I just have all of these guys basically right around the field, except for Walker.
One other thing to point out. So on DraftKings, I'm only getting like 5% Mike Conley at 6,400. On FanDuel, Mike Conley is $5,300, 42% owned, 31% chance of being optimal. He is the second highest owned guy on FanDuel and from this team, and has the highest optimal percentage. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, also shooting guard, small forward, 4,400, is getting 49% ownership. So he's getting a lot on DraftKings. He's even better on FanDuel, where he's $500 cheaper.
Whew. The wild slate for Minnesota. Just going to have an overwhelming amount of these idiots. I anxiously await when we get news in an hour that Anthony Edwards is playing.
Oh, I was going to say that Wendell Moore is starting.
Oh, that was a last year thing.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised at this point, but I don't trust anything. One guy that this doesn't affect, which we mentioned earlier on the strategy show too, like I don't think there's any change to Rudy Gobert, really. He's just not that kind of guy. I
wish I was getting more, but I'm only getting like 1%. Fields at 6. His salary's just jumped. He's up to 7,400. I said it with Miles Turner too. You know, this isn't as difficult a matchup as Turner has against Miami, but it's just there's enough centers in that like 5K to 6,500 range that I'm getting to that it's just tough for me to get all the way up to where Gobert is priced.
Yeah. Anything else here from Minnesota?
No, playing this team a lot.
The Los Angeles Lakers are 6-point dogs in Oklahoma City, 233 total for the Lakers. Max Christie, questionable. Actually, we got a new injury report since I've had this. Let's go to the 5 o'clock injury report. Let's try this again. Max Christie, questionable. Jackson Hayes, questionable. LeBron James, questionable. Cam Reddish, questionable. Anthony Davis, probable. I don't have any of it. I think LeBron and AD are the two guys you get to. If you want to get to it, I'm assuming you have a little bit of them. You tend to have them, but this could conceivably look a little bit different if we get some of these Q tags breaking the wrong way. They are on a back-to-back.
Yeah, there is the potential for this to change, but with everybody projected in, LeBron's getting 3% ownership on DraftKings, 7% chance of being optimal. I have 7%. Anthony Davis is getting 5% ownership, 6% chance of being optimal. I have 5.5%. So those are my two highest owned guys from the Lakers. I have 3% D'Angelo Russell, who is 3 to 4% owned. I don't have anybody else right now. Obviously, if LeBron were to get ruled out, Davis looks better, Russell looks better, everybody looks better, at least to some degree. If Christie got ruled out and Reddish started, he'd look better. But, you know, Reddish only played 20 minutes last night in his return. I don't expect him to just be ramped up to 1 million minutes anytime soon. Christian Wood played 25 minutes yesterday, but a lot of that was garbage time. Yeah. I don't really think there's anything here unless we get multiple guys ruled out, really.
Or Jimmy Butler on track to play, by the way.
What'd you say?
Jimmy Butler on track to play.
Good.
Yeah, I don't have a single share of the Lakers, but I'm not at all surprised by that.
Yeah.
I do have some shares of the Oklahoma City Thunder. 10% ownership. I have some shares of the Thunder. 10% ownership to Jalen Williams, 11% to Josh Getty. Those are the only two guys over double digits on the DK side. 8% coming into Shea. I have 9, which is fun. I also have 47% Jalen Williams and 41% Josh Getty. Help me get away from this.
I don't know how you got there. I'm getting to OKC, but not nearly as much as you. The only guy I have in double-digit ownership on DraftKings right now is I do have 22% Jalen Williams. He's 5,900, small forward, power forward, 10% owned. You and I talked about it this morning. He's just kind of at the bottom of his price range, and he's difficult to rely on. He's playing on a team with Chet Holmgren and Shea. Like, he's not the primary offensive piece here, but he is still a solid enough fantasy producer at this price tag and moderate ownership that I'm getting to him quite a bit. Other than that, I'm not getting too much. I have 9% Chet, which I like. $7,900 center, 4% owned. I have 9. So in that 7 to 8K range, he is the center that I'm getting to, I guess, but still not getting a ton of it. Certainly happy to be there. Shea, I have 8%. The Field's at 8%. Always happy to get to him, but he is up to 10.5. He does not produce quite as well when he's playing with Jalen Williams. Not that he produces poorly, but he's an absolute monster without Jalen Williams. I have 7% Getty, Fields at 10%, so not too far behind there. And then 2% Lou Dort, which matches the Field. So I have all 5 of the starters, but Jalen Williams is the only one that I have double digits of. And as far as being over the field, it's Williams and Chet for me.
I'm going to end up winning a GPP tonight with Josh Getty and having to get his jersey. We got a kids large.
Get one of the custom ones, Getty number 16.
Yeah. With a less than sign or something on it. Yeah, I don't look like I have him grading out pretty well here. He's 1.04 fantasy points per minute over the past 30 days. I got him around like 1.1. I only have him in for 27 minutes. I think it's just that like that salary range and that point guard shooting guard eligibility. Like I think I'm turning quickly into Getty.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think it's
Probably
a really aggressive, like 41% is aggressive, but I think the idea of it makes sense.
Yeah, same. I'm just really curious, like what is his minute ceiling now? If he's having a good game, does he play 30, 32? Will he even play 32, or is that just like not even in the cards for the Thunder any longer?
I don't know.
Like most minutes he's played in the last month is 32 on November 12th. That was the game before Kenrich Williams came back. Most he's played since then is 29. But like, I mean, really nobody outside of Shea and Jalen Williams really get like big old minutes for the Thunder.
Yeah. For what it's worth, this season in the games that Chet and SGA have played, 13 games for Getty, 1.04 DraftKings points per minute, 27 minutes per game. I mean, the production is still there. You're just hoping to run good on minutes. For Jalen Williams, the one that I'm getting to, 0.87 DraftKings points per minute, but 33 minutes per game. Not like I said, not the priority on offense on this team, but certainly a capable enough player.
All right. Anything else you want to touch on for OKC?
No. And to answer Julian's question, no, Josh Getty has not been good.
I mean, he's fine. DFS guy.
He's fine from a fantasy standpoint.
Yeah, I would say that he's been good for a DFS per minute type.
Right. Yeah.
As a real basketball
1.04, but from a basketball standpoint, no.
Yeah. And he's always been that guy too.
Yeah. I made that mistake in a Twitter conversation like a few weeks ago. For some reason, I just like misremembered that he had a good year last year, and he did not.
No, he did not. He did not. You know what is good though, Adam? The pricing on Odd Shopper nowadays. If you've been not aware, we made a pretty sizable change to the Odd Shopper package, and it is very customer friendly. $49.95 for the month, $14.95 for the week. You can take a market-based approach to beating the books, beating the pick'em sites, shop those lines, get expected value rates and expected win rates on all of these plays, get access to our Discord, get the premium picks as well. This is a package that was twice this price a month ago, and we have now cut it for you guys, and you're getting more stuff, and you'll get more on a day-to-day basis. We're constantly rolling out more books and more things on Odd Shopper. But if you want to make your sports betting plays better, this is the way to start. At the very least, come check out the weekly package. I don't have a promo code or anything for you. We just finished that Cyber Monday promo up. But if you want to get better at sports betting, starting with Odd Shopper is a great way to do it. I know Adam is deep in the Odd Shopper game for today. You can see the screenshots from Greg over the past year. He has been absolutely smashing with Odd Shopper plays. Just come in the door. Come check it out. Links are in the description if you want to do it. But pricing, much more advantageous to you, and I think you guys will appreciate that. The main event of the evening, the Atlanta Hawks are 7.5-point favorites in San Antonio, 247 total. This one is going to be played with no defense and lots of running around. Now, for the Atlanta side of this game, it would help if I could actually find out where Atlanta is. There they are. Everybody but Jalen Johnson is in. For the Spurs, we are waiting on a Q tag on Victor Wembanyama. 20% ownership to Capella, 20 to Sadiq Bey, 20 to Trae Young, around 10 to Onyeka Okongwu. I missed the 20 on Bogdanovic. The Atlanta side, like, you want to get to these dudes because the Spurs are a fantastic matchup. I don't have as much as I thought I would.
I have a little bit more, I think, than I did this morning. I'm still not going too crazy on any individual guy, but I have a lot of exposure to this team. Capella's my highest owned Hawk. I have 31%. He's 5,700, good spot, good price tag. As you mentioned before, we have a pretty strong mid-range of centers. We have plenty of capable centers on this slate, but we don't have the Jokic, Embiid guys at the top. So it just becomes a little bit easier to get to some of these mid-range guys. I'm getting 31% Capella. I'm getting to 25% Trae Young. Fields at 23%. He looks fantastic. 9,700. Small sample this year, but it was interesting to me, and I thought to look at it because Jalen Johnson is a relatively high usage guy. And, you know, when you think about this team, it's Trae Young, it's DeJounte Murray, and then it's Jalen Johnson, basically, when you're thinking about the starters. Trae Young has seen a nice bump in a relatively small sample without Jalen Johnson this year. I lost the... Oh, there it is. I know it was in my article today, but he's at 1.35 DraftKings points per minute, and he's at 1.35 DraftKings points per minute in his games with DeJounte Murray overall. But without Jalen Johnson, with Jalen Johnson on the floor, Trae's at 1.27 DraftKings points per minute. Without him, he's at 1.42. 34.9% usage rate without Jalen Johnson on the floor compared to 27.3 with him on. 45.7% assist percentage without Johnson on the floor compared to 39.4 with him on. Now, some of that is probably from also not controlling for whether or not DeJounte Murray is on. So you're getting like second unit production from Young, but it does make sense for his rates to go up at least a bit without Jalen Johnson. And even if Jalen Johnson were in, he would look great here against San Antonio. The only negative I can see, and this is not really a negative, San Antonio, while they have been very bad defensively overall, and they do play at a fast pace, they're actually middle of the pack in terms of defending pick and roll this season. And Trae Young is the league leader in pick and roll possessions per game. But that's one of those things where it's interesting to look at and interesting to say. I don't care at all from a fantasy standpoint.
No,
like if they were the worst team in the league defending pick and roll, I would feel better about having Trae Young, but it's not going to change anything I'm doing.
Yeah. It also helps that like, it's still like you can be bad on a rate basis, but still get there on a volume basis. And this is a volume game. Right.
Exactly. Like points per possession is per possession. You're getting way more possessions now. And again, it's not like they're just shutting it down and or anything. They're not as bad at defending it as I figured they would be when I pulled it up.
Yeah. At first, I thought you were about to be like, the San Antonio Spurs are 28th in allowing points to a point guard, and I was just like, come on.
You thought that's what I was going to say?
I thought it might have been a bit.
Oh, okay. Also, another thing that I don't think is going to change anything that I'm doing, but if Wemby's not hanging around the rim, things get a little bit easier here too.
Yeah,
but
let's get to that Spurs side. Unless you have more on the Hawks.
Yeah, I mean, I have 21% Bogdanovic. I have 20% Okongwu. So I'm a little bit over the field there at 5K. I have 17% Sadiq Bey, only 7% DeAndre Hunter, 3% DeJounte Murray. The field's not really getting to much of those guys either, but I'm around the field or a little bit over on most of this team.
Yeah, I have 4% Bogdanovic, 5% Okongwu, 11 Bey. I have 17 of Trae Young. I thought I'd have a little bit more here, but when you're playing all of Josh Giddey, it's really hard to just fit other people in.
Yeah.
Spurs side.
How much?
I'll wait for you.
I hate that. Like 17% of my Capella lineups have Okongwu. I don't really like that.
Yeah, it's a little heavy for today.
Yeah, but again, it's sort of also 5,700 and 5K in a game with a nearly 250 point total. It's not the end of the world.
No, not at all. Not in this game. That's for sure. Although the last time we were playing Capella and Okongwu together in a game with a massive total for Atlanta, they both were dog shit.
Yeah.
We're getting to this.
I might go ahead and set that rule. I don't know.
I don't hate it. 15% ownership to Jeremy Sohan, Keldon Johnson, basically Wemby and Zach Collins. I'm getting a lot of this San Antonio team, but it's only into two players. I got a boatload of Jeremy Sohan at 5,700. I think he is also another one of those like mild pivots to quickly. And Victor Wembanyama is my current most exposed player. I have 70%. I don't care that he's 11. I don't care if that's based on the Q tag. I think he is an absolutely exceptional play if he's playing today.
I am really jealous that you have that much of him. I only have 9% Wemby right now. He's my fourth highest owned Spur. I think he's a very, very good play. He's a 1.4 fantasy point per minute guy for the season. He's getting one of the most favorable matchups you can get. 4.1 blocks per 100 possessions this year, and this game is going to have more than 100 possessions. Looks fantastic if you can get there. I was getting a ton this morning when he was a lot lower owned than Karl Anthony Towns. Now I'm much more similar on the two of them, but I really would like to be getting more Wemby. I do like that I'm still getting to the Spurs, though. I have 26% Jeremy Sohan, Fields at 15%, $5,700 point guard. Happy with that. I'm getting to 23% Zach Collins. He's 12% owned, $6,400 center. So this is one of the centers that is pulling like my Mitchell Robinson ownership, for example. It's $1,200 or $1,000 to get up to Zach Collins. You can find that somewhere else pretty easily in a 2v2 or 3v3, and you're just getting like 2/3 the ownership going to Collins. So I do like that. I'm getting 15% Keldon at 12% owned, 7K small forward, power forward. He looks good. He's going to look better if Wemby sits. That's probably the most obvious place that usage is going if Wemby is out. I'm getting to 6% Devin Vassell, 2% Trey Jones. So I'm getting to the Spurs. I do wish I was getting more Wemby, but I also get, at 8,700, why I'm not getting crazy amounts. Like I wouldn't, at the current ownership numbers, I wouldn't want to just be like jamming Wemby and not getting Karl Anthony Towns, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, I have them both. So I'm very happy with that. Here's the real question. I don't think we didn't touch on it this morning, and we don't have a lot to say on Clippers Warriors. So this really is like the end of this show. Who do you think starts if it's not Wemby in there?
Last time this team played was 26th against Denver. Vassell.
Yeah, probably. Who do you think benefits if Wemby is out? Is that Dominic Barlow? Where do the minutes go?
Because I think
Vassell's not getting more than 4 minutes more. I think, he's been like 26 a game. You get him to 30 in this one. Yeah. Sure. What do you do? What do we do with the other 26 minutes?
Champagny.
That's the real issue, is that like they can go a lot of different directions. You could just play Keldon Johnson at the
and Champagny can get the start too, I guess. Like we have seen him just be that guy that moves into the starting lineup. I'm just assuming because Vassell played 26 minutes last game that he would step back in.
Yeah.
I think Champagny would play more.
Chetty
/ Barlow.
Yeah. Does it create anybody? 3,900 for Chetty right now. Like, how many more minutes do you got to give him before it's like, okay, we have this conversation?
48.
Fair.
But no, I mean, I think if Wemby, the way I view this, and it's been this way with them every time we've been in this situation, I don't think it necessarily gives you like a slam dunk value because they do have so many interchangeable guys. But if Wemby's in, you can't play Chetty. If Wemby's out, you absolutely can take shots at Chetty. Branham at 4,500 becomes somebody you can at least throw into some lineups if Wemby is out. Champagny at 4,400, same kind of thing. Shooting guard, small forward. If he starts, he actually looks like a pretty good value, I think. So it opens the door for, especially with McDermott doubtful too. It would open the door for these guys to get minutes. It's just that they have so many guys that are equally bad and do the same thing that it's hard to be confident in them. But we have seen Champagny be the preferred guy so far this year.
Anything else for the Spurs?
No.
Clippers are 3-point dogs in Golden State, 227 total, like 5 to 10% ownership on Zubats, Harden, Leonard, and George. As of right now, we do have a Q tag on Norm Powell. I don't really have anything here from the Clippers. I think any one of those four guys that I mentioned, though, are more than viable.
Yeah, I think the Clippers are just kind of in that mold where if you get to the main pieces, great. I have exposure.
Brandon Miller out.
You said Brandon Miller?
Yeah.
That's interesting. PJ Washington?
Probably.
Better, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm guessing for the Clippers. Right, yeah. The starting lineup will answer some questions there.
Yeah.
For the Clippers, I have exposure to four guys. It's Kawhi, Zoo, George, and Harden, the four you would expect. They are all perfectly fine. I have between 5 and 10% of all four of them. Harden looks pretty good on FanDuel, where he's like 7,400 or 7,500. But yeah, the field's getting the 4 to 10% of those guys. So am I. I think they all are perfectly fine, like secondary pieces.
The Golden State side of this one is a little bit different. It's scattered like 5 to 10% ownership on everybody on the DK side. except one player. We're also seeing 30% ownership to Draymond on FanDuel, 25 to Looney, 20 to Steph. And then the guy that's actually pulling the love, 20% ownership on both sides to Moses Moody. He is shooting guard, small forward, 4,300 on DK. I've got 33%. I think we've created some value here with no Chris Paul and no Gary Payton.
Yeah, I have 33% too, and I don't like it, but I get why it's happening. He's actually been a 0.91 DraftKings point per minute guy this year, which is much higher than I thought I was going to see when I looked. Shooting guard, small forward's really nice. The minutes are available for him. So, yeah, I'm getting there. I have 15% Clay on DraftKings, so I'm still over the field on him. 6,400 shooting guard, small forward. I like that. Draymond at 6,500 getting 9% ownership. I have 14. Both of those guys, I just kind of like being 2 to 3x. They're 5 to 8% ownership. I think that looks pretty good. Scherer, 8% owned, or I have 8%. He's like 4.5% owned. Happy with that. I have 7%.
I forgot to mention, there's no Andrew Wiggins today. That's the other piece that's really
right. That's why Moody is a thing.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that.
Yeah. I'm getting the 7% Steph at 5% owned. I have 4% Looney. So I'm getting to a lot of Golden State players. I'm not necessarily jamming any in. My highest owned one is Moody at 33, followed by Clay and Draymond between 14 and 15. But they're all pretty low owned with the exception of Moody, and I'm just getting a little bit over the field on most of them.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
NBA Live Before Lock coming up next. Hit that like button if you haven't done it yet. Let's run that number a little bit higher. Good luck tonight, everybody. Stay on this stream. Show's coming up next, and then you get NFL Live Before Lock. Peace.
What is happening, everybody? It is Thursday. It's time for a little more NBA Live Before Lock. If you guys could do us just a small favor, just the smallest of favors as you come in, take the 2 seconds, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. It helps us out a whole bunch. And I'm not usually here on Thursday nights. Typically, it's Eric and Matt who are doing the Thursday night NBA show. Then we get Lofty and Neil doing the Thursday night football show. but Lofty still away only for a couple more days because his daughter was born. So we got Matt here with me on Thursday night, then Eric moving back to the Thursday night football show. So it's me picking up the extra show here, which is all the more reason. Just do us that favor to like and subscribe. And also, one thing I'm going to do for you guys in return is tell you about the Dak Prescott free square. If you haven't signed up at Underdog, now is the time to do it. You sign up using the link we have below, because when you sign up at Underdog for the first time, not only do you get a deposit bonus of up to $100, but you get access to this free square, which is only good for people who are signing up for the first time. Dak Prescott over 0.5 total yards, Matt. And I'm going to ask you to make a prediction. It's going to be tough. Eric barely got the question right because he's an idiot. Do you think Dak Prescott will have more or less than 0.5 total yards? Could be passing yard, rushing yard, all of it combined. Will he go over or under that number tonight?
I'm going to go out on a big limb and say yes.
All right. You answered that question a lot more smoother than Eric did. He had to put a lot more thought into it. He had to crunch some numbers. I agree with you. I think it's an over, and you guys should be taking advantage of that free square at Underdog by signing up for the first time. And yeah, let's start talking about this slate here. And already we've got a ton of players on the injury report today. If you guys have questions for us in Discord, at me, and we've got a super chat already in here. It is from Ace of Spade, wants to know the best options for DK tiers. And I've got this all loaded up and ready to go for you here, Ace of Spade. Tier 1, I like Giannis the most. By the way, do you have a preferred spend up option on this slate, Matt?
No, I don't. I think that all of them look similarly. I don't know what you consider spend up. My favorite like upper tier type player is probably Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah, so for me on DraftKings, I get to Trae Young the most on the high end. And on FanDuel, it is Steph Curry, no Andrew Wiggins, and only $8,900 for Steph Curry over on FanDuel. I mean, there's a lot of upside in Steph Curry, $8,900. And, you know, I guess because he's $8,900, it's so much different of a price point we usually think of Steph. So maybe he isn't really like a spend up option in the traditional sense, but he should be. So I do like Steph quite a bit at $8,900 on FanDuel. But rounding out the rest of the tiers, tier 2, I also like Trae Young. Tier 2 here is Trae Young, my answer. Tier 3, I like Bam Adebayo. Jimmy Butler is expected to play today, on track to play after he was listed as questionable earlier, but I still like Bam Adebayo in tier 3. Tier 4, very, very close between guys like Karl Anthony Towns, Victor Wembanyama, and as well as Jimmy Butler. But for me, I'm going to go with Cat. Same as you. You just said you like Karl Anthony Towns with Anthony Edwards. I'm not expected to play. He's doubtful to play. I'm going to go with Cat here. And Wemby, questionable play there. We'll see if Wemby's in or out. And that is going to be something that could potentially alter the slate. And I see Ryan made me chuckle in the chat there because I see the message come up. And it's really one of my favorite ongoing bits because of how upset it makes Eric. But listen, we can't do it when Eric's not here. But the exotic play of the night, it'll be back next week when Eric and I are on the show together. Tier 5, it is Kawhi Leonard for me. And then my favorite option, tier 6, another tier that's really, really close. I am going to go with, all right, so my answer for now is Chet, but there are some interesting things to think about here. DeMar DeRozan is questionable. He's in tier 6. If he's in and Zach LaVine is out, he's the answer to me in tier 6. But we need some pieces to go right here. We need LaVine to be out. We need DeRozan to be in. So Chet Holmgren for now, but I'm going to answer DeMar DeRozan if we do not have Zach LaVine out there. And so the people love the exotic play of the night. Are you familiar with the exotic play of the night, by the way, Matt?
I am. I heard it. I heard it, but I couldn't tell you like exactly the details of it.
All right. So somebody, and I don't really know what the expected response to this was, but one of the first shows of the year we did, somebody left us a super chat and asked, who is the most exotic play of the night? And Eric answered, which I don't know what exotic is supposed to mean, but Eric answered Peyton Pritchard, who just from a demographic standpoint, I would consider to be not the most exotic play you've ever seen in your life. And then he gave another answer that kind of fit a similar profile. So it's come up ever since then where we'll say to Eric, all right, like Joe Ingles, the exotic play of the night. And we just try to force white players on him. And he gets very upset by it.
For me, when you say that, the first place my mind goes is like out on a reservation type play, like exotic, like you're going far off the island, like someone that no one else is playing. That's what I took it as, but I like the white guy thing too.
Yeah. So there's no way to know exactly what the super chat what the intention was, but that guy's got his $2 worth because we now bring it up on every single show ever since then. And I don't know this one's going to go away. I think it's here to stay. So no exotic play of the night that's popping up right now, but I have a feeling it'll be back here in short order. I'll go into Discord and see if there's any questions we have that have come in from Discord, and not quite yet. If you guys have any of those, add us as we go here. Injury report, though. We've got Edwards is doubtful. Andrew Wiggins is out. Wemby is questionable. Levine is questionable. DeRozan is questionable. Clarkson is questionable. Of all the players who are questionable, who do you think is most likely to impact your lineups? Which situation, Matt?
That's a good question because the domino effect in NBA is just so real. It's impossible for me to answer that right now, just because there's so many combinations that could come up in terms of who's in and who's out. I remember the last show we were on, you were talking about you didn't play DraftKings or FanDuel, one of them, because like you were doing the show, but then all the news came out and you were like, I wish I had played on the other one. Yeah. And last night we had an example of why you can never like be safe with Embiid being rolled out. It just, you never know with the NBA. So I just couldn't answer that right now. I mean, with the guys that are questionable, I think that Wembanyama being out probably impacts the most. But then you've got the Bulls guys. I'm not sure. How would you answer that question?
Probably the Bulls guys, because in the event that both Levine and DeRozan are out, it just opens up so much value from the Bulls. Like, Vooch would be somebody to get to. And also something to note, that game starts at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So something else we should consider here also is, how much of our roster spots do we want to be taken up by that Cleveland-Portland game? Because that's a game where are there some players who look okay there right now? Particularly, Jared Allen on Jared Allen on FanDuel looks good. Evan Mobley on DK looks decent. But do we really want somebody from that game taking up a lineup spot? It's something that I think is worth thinking about, because you could be in a situation kind of like yesterday where, and I know most of the value kind of sucked from the Sixers yesterday. Paul Reed was disappointing. Melton ended up having a really big fourth quarter where he was decent, but Maxey disappointed. But generally in that spot, you want to be jamming the 76ers guys. And if you were in a spot yesterday where you had already had a lot of exposure to the early games, you were probably disappointed that you didn't have the ability to swap to the Sixers guys. Now, at the end of the day, you actually wanted to have like all of your lineups front loaded because those were the guys that played well. But for this kind of slate, we've got Cleveland, Portland, man. I'm not sure how much exposure I really want to get to this game, because I don't want these players taking up lineup spots. Because while I don't know who is going to be in or who's going to be out, there are so many players on the injury report that I assume it is going to open up pretty significant value.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't even like these plays as much or more than the late plays, even if guys are in. So I'm certainly not willing to risk the roster spots, like if guys are out and I want to change things. I will say your point on Philly is well taken. Like in any scenario, you want to just be able to jam Philly in last night. They weren't productive. But it also helped to have the late roster spots because Houston ended up being really good. Like Jalen Green was needed. Jokic was needed to win the $15. So having the roster spots was really valuable last night. Like Anthony Davis was really good early, but Jokic was a little bit better. I think that sometimes not playing the early game gets a little bit overrated just because of late swap. But here, like, I don't even want to play it anyways. So I'm 100% with you.
We just had Anthony Edwards officially ruled out, and he was doubtful. So we're fully expecting him to not play. But I like getting that confirmation when players who are doubtful are ruled out, because while doubtful, like 19 out of 20 times the players don't play, every once in a while you do see somebody who's doubtful end up playing, somebody who's probable ends up out. So always good to have that official confirmation. And also news that we have, we'll hit on both of these in a second. Bryce McGowan's, he's going to be starting for the Hornets, with the news that there is going to be no of Miller in the lineup. It was, let me see. What is the starting lineup for Charlotte? It is, I saw McGowan's is in. Was there anything else notable? And just Bryce McGowan's is going to be starting in place of Brandon Miller. And then we've also got the crazy amount of value that's going to be on the Minnesota Timberwolves with Anthony Edwards, doubtful, not expected to play before, now officially out. And when I've been running my lineups here, Matt, one thing that I do not expect to change about my lineups is that I'm going to be getting a lot of exposure to Minnesota. You had said your favorite pay-up option on the slate is Karl-Anthony Towns. It's really hard to disagree. I went with Steph Curry on FanDuel and with Trae Young on DraftKings, but it's not because I dislike Karl-Anthony Towns, just other guys I get to a little bit more of. But who are the real priorities for you from Minnesota without Edwards playing?
I love Minnesota here. I mean, you're facing a Utah team that's playing awful basketball right now defensively. Even a team like Memphis, who we've talked about, has been awful, especially from the offensive end, was really good last night. So I like all of Minnesota here. It starts with Towns. I mean, we've read this book before with him when he was by himself before Edwards came there, and he was one of the top DFS producers out there, like continuously 10K plus. He was an elite top tier center. I think we see, it's not definitely going to happen tonight that he performs like that, but that's certainly within the realm. Then you've got Kyle Anderson at 4,500 who can step up into various roles. So really like him as a value piece with a lot of other guys on DK priced up. Naz Reid is just really productive when he gets run. There's a bunch more minutes to go around now with Edwards out, and they need some more offensive production. Those three guys I like a lot. I think Troy Brown's in play, probably getting too much ownership. So not really loving that at 4,200. Kind of like the idea of pivoting to Shake Milton there. But those three guys that I mentioned, Cat, Anderson, and Reed, are three certain priorities for me. How about you?
By the way, just some other news here. Zach LaVine is officially out. So just talking about how that could impact my laps. And we got DeMar DeRozan as questionable. So I was just about to rerun lineups with McGowan starting. And now it's like, all right, I'm going to hold up here because now I'm going to need the update for the Bulls. And we'll see what ends up projecting well for us. So Jordan, in a second, we'll look at the Bulls projections. But first, we'll have to wait for it to update. And we'll follow up on the question Matt had just asked me here. We're asking about my priorities from the Minnesota Timberwolves. And this is the best team on the slate to target, right? So there's different guys that kind of look good for different reasons. I agree with you on Towns, right? One of my favorite pay up options on the entire slate. And on DraftKings, he's the pay up option I get to the second most behind Trae Young. And on FanDuel, the one I get to the second most behind Steph Curry. So where does the usage go in the absence of Anthony Edwards? It has to go Karl-Anthony Towns. I see it the exact same way as you. We saw Cat was regularly one of the best fantasy producers in the league prior to Anthony Edwards coming to the team. And now Cat just goes back to that old role. We don't see very much of Anthony Edwards miss games because he gets hurt in games like fairly frequently, but he almost always bounces back and is fine.
Right.
There are times like he'll roll his ankle really bad and he's on the court, like rolling around in pain. It's like, oh my God, Edwards is going to be out for like 2 months or something like that. And then all of a sudden he's back in the game 5 minutes later. So we never really see him actually miss time, but he isn't going to be playing today. You have to expect a lot of usage goes to Karl-Anthony Towns. On the lower end, these are my priorities, and I'm going to do it differently across the two different sites. On DraftKings, I'm getting to a ton of Naz Reid. And I know that he's not somebody who you think like is a direct replacement for Anthony Edwards, but look at what happened in the last game after Anthony Edwards got hurt. We saw Naz Reid play more in the second half, finishes with 25 minutes, ends up scoring 31 fantasy points. He was in my best lineup the other day. I came in, I think it was fourth in the $15 on DraftKings with Naz Reid. Totally lucky. I wasn't expecting Edwards to get hurt during the game, but just because I saw that happen, I'm like very acutely aware of how Naz Reid can benefit from the situation. Sneaky guy who gains extra minutes. I don't really think people think about as much. Kyle Anderson, Troy Brown. So those are the three guys in order, the value plays that I like from Minnesota. Naz Reid 1, Kyle Anderson 2, Troy Brown 3, and then I really like getting to Karl-Anthony Towns as a pay-up option. FanDuel, it's way, way different because they went ahead and they priced the players differently. So Mike Conley is only $5,300 on FanDuel. He is my most rostered player on the entire FanDuel slate right now. I love getting to Mike Conley at $5,300. Then behind him, on the value side, it is Nickeil Alexander-Walker, then Troy Brown, and then it's still Karl-Anthony Towns, my favorite pay up. So different pricing across the two different sites definitely makes it interesting. I'm personally playing on FanDuel today. I know a lot of people know this when they watch the shows, and I like to be transparent about it. I always build lineups before the show for both FanDuel and DraftKings. For me, it's just the easiest way to talk about it is do the lineups as if I'm actually playing them on both sites. And then as we get more news that comes out throughout the show, it's hard for me to update for both sites. So I just ultimately only end up playing on one, and I'm playing on FanDuel today, not on DraftKings. But that is how my lineups shook out for the Timberwolves news and the players that I'm getting to the most there. Now, let's see if we have a Bulls update on projections yet. If we do, then I'll ask you to throw it up on the screen, Jordan. But let's see. Projections and the Bulls 21 seconds ago. Perfect timing. Jordan Klein, pull up the Bulls projections. Let's throw them on screen. We'll see who's projecting well now. Zach LaVine is out. Caruso's in. DeRozan still listed as questionable. So we're going to need that other update on DeRozan. But this is the situation I was talking about before, Matt, where if you get this scenario, both LaVine and DeRozan are out, all kinds of value opens up from Chicago in a game where they were probably going to get absolutely curb stomped by the Milwaukee Bucks. But still, somebody's going to have to score. Somebody's going to have to play minutes. And it's ultimately going to be some sort of DFS value that opens up.
Going to Minnesota real quick. One thing for like people making limited amount of lineups. So all the guys that we talked about are getting a lot of love. But something that I know that Adam and Josh talk about is not the power, but the ownership power, I guess, you get not playing someone. So Anderson is overowned here. They're all overowned. But if I'm not playing Alexander Walker and Troy Brown, that's 60% of the field right there. I think both those guys are a little bit overpriced where Anderson's underpriced. I understand why those guys are getting love. Those guys can do more offensively and Minnesota needs that. But you have to look at who you're not playing in lineups as well, I guess is my only point.
Yeah, and by the way, for people in the chat who are saying like, oh, Mike Conley's washed. Yeah, he's not the same guy he was a couple of years ago. But there's a price point where you want to play him. And to me, $5,300 on FanDuel is clearly the price point where you want to play him. He's $6,400. There's a reason that DraftKings made him $6,400. They're pricing him up because they weren't expecting Edwards to play. He's just too cheap on FanDuel. It's the salary you want to play him.
We're not picking Conley to start our franchise with for the next 10 years. We're looking to play him in DFS tonight. Like it's the fact that he's not as good as he was 10 years ago, I mean, is irrelevant.
Yeah. So Mike Conley, it's not like we have our projection on Mike Conley is like right around 30 fantasy points. Nothing crazy. And in fact, for DraftKings, that's probably you don't even really want to play him at that price and that kind of projection. But then on FanDuel, when you're getting 30 fantasy points from somebody who's 5,300, it's just an entirely different situation. So Mike Conley, really strong option. Somebody you want to play in cash games on FanDuel as well. But let's look at some of these Bulls player projections now because we've got it all updated. And this is going to be telling for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's going to inform us on if DeMar DeRozan is in, who do we want to get to from the Chicago Bulls? But then on the other side too, it really shows the condensed fantasy point projections we have here, how good Vooch is going to look as an option and Kobe White if DeRozan doesn't play. Because right now, well, Kobe White may be a little bit less so on DraftKings because he actually is priced all the way up to $6,600. So
he'll still look good though.
Yeah, he'll look good, but like not somebody who not like a must play or anything. He'll be a good player.
Definitely not, but I don't think the ownership will be there like a must play either, which in turn is what makes him interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
But if we go ahead and look at the current projections, there's only 3 players on the team who projected for over 25 fantasy points, at least for DraftKings. And look at the FanDuel pricing and the projections after this. Vooch right now, 40.5 fantasy points at $8,100. Serviceable, right? He's somebody that you're okay with plugging into lineups. Not a super priority. The guy that is the highest priority for me right now would be DeMar DeRozan at $7,700. Should he be in? If DeRozan plays, it is going to be hard for me to get to Kobe White at $6,600 though.
Yeah, 100%. Like you kind of need both those guys to be out to play Kobe White here. If DeRozan's in, he's like a deep GPP flyer. If DeRozan's out, he's still not a must at that price, but he's got upside because they're going to need scoring. And besides Vooch, like it's going to come from him.
And then if we go and look at, by the way, some more updates here, Doug McDermott rolled out, but okay, who cares? It's not going to make all that much of a difference. FanDuel, if we go ahead and we look at some of the FanDuel pricing here, which is actually very similar to the DraftKings pricing. DeRozan is $8,100. Vooch is $76. So that is a little bit inverse there, but you could also only roster one center on FanDuel. So it makes it a little bit harder to really prioritize Vooch. However, if DeRozan is out, totally different story. You're going to want to load up. Vooch is the best center play on FanDuel if DeRozan is out at $7,800. But as things stand right now with him in, good play, not somebody you're like forcing yourself to get to a whole bunch of. And then Kobe White at $6,700. Same deal as what we just talked about on DraftKings at $6,700. Am I playing Kobe White right now when he's projected for 30 fantasy points? Not really. But I'm going to be playing a lot of them, or not a lot, but I'm going to be playing a good amount of him if DeRozan is ruled out because he's somebody who will end up being projected for, like mid-30s fantasy points. And he's probably going to rate out pretty well in the Sims. So no real significant differences between FanDuel and DraftKings when it comes to the pricing there on the Bulls. I'm going to go back into Discord to make sure that there aren't any questions that I missed. And here we go. We got some questions coming in. First here is from Einsteinium. He wants to know, who is our favorite player to target from the Hornets Nets game? I think it has to be McGowan's now, doesn't it?
I don't know. I mean, he's so bad from a DFS perspective. Like I I don't really want to use a roster spot on him. Dark Tools, I'm not even seeing him. Like, am I missing something with him?
He is starting. You might want to refresh it because I don't know if you've refreshed it.
No, we have him projected for 16 and a half drafting points. Like, he's fine, but certainly not someone I think is a priority.
Not a priority, but I still there's nobody I want to play more than him from that game. It's
Agreed.
more drafting specific than FanDuel because he's nearly the flatten in price. So he's if you're trying to pay up for studs, having him in lineups makes sense to save salary. But there's nobody else that I'm really prioritizing from the Charlotte Brooklyn game.
Yeah, same. I want to just touch on the past point you were making about Conley, and I know you talked about Curry earlier, and you also just said that pricing is similar on both sites, and it is, which makes guys like Curry and Conley really stand out on FanDuel. Both of them are 23% cheaper on FanDuel than DraftKings. So when you've got similar pricing across both sites and guys stand out like that, that makes them really good plays on whatever site they're cheaper on.
Yeah, for sure. And specifically true on DraftKings compared to FanDuel with cheap guys, just because the min price is lower there. So I'm going to go McGowan's, but not somebody we absolutely have to play, just serviceable punt option there. The process is asking, do we like Jalen Williams or Drummond better for DK high stakes? So Jalen Williams, this is Jalen with a Y. I've said this before. It should be illegal. Teams should not be allowed to have two players with the same name on the same team. I don't care if they spell their names differently. Illegal. I don't allow it. So he wants to know Jalen Williams or Andre Drummond better as a punt option for DraftKings, Matt.
I'm on Drummond here. I wrote about Drummond in my contrarian article today. Like, he looks decent now. He looks good now with Levine out. With DeRozan, like, the more guys that are out, the better I like him. Not just because like he'll have to play maybe a couple more minutes, but because this game is much more adverse to be lopsided, which could be a boost to his minutes. Not playing him because of that, but he's so cheap. Like, he can be productive in 15 minutes. If he gets 25 minutes somehow, he'll be a must play.
Yeah, and the other thing too with Andre Drummond is, and also he only gave us two options here, right? It's not like we're going to say like Andre Drummond is somebody to lock and load into lineups. He's given us two choices, Jalen Williams or Andre Drummond. Drummond's a better fantasy producer. And also he's going to see a little bit more usage when he's on the court now because, like you mentioned, Zach LaVine is out. So if you're looking for somebody who's a punt play, I think I said the same thing about Andre Drummond the last time the Bulls were on a slate as well, is if you are going to have, you know, a punt guy who might not play a lot of minutes, you at least want it to be a Drummond type guy who's a really good points per minute fantasy producer.
I know that the other guys have talked about this a lot. Like, you don't want to have to hope for minutes and hope for the guy to play well. Like, you need multiple things to go right. With Drummond, you just need the minutes because he's going to produce. And the more we talk about it, the more I think he's a good play on this slate. Like, even if DeRozan's in, like I said, I like him better if DeRozan's out. But there were multiple slates recently where he's been like 4,500, 5K. DK is not cheapening other guys' prices. Like, I know he hasn't played a ton, but he's always been productive when he plays. Like, give me him over Bryce McGowan, who we just talked about. Now, I know the opportunity cost is higher because he plays center, but we don't have Jokic and Embiid on this slate. So give me Drummond there. Like you said, though, like, I'm not out here saying you got to slam him in. It was him or Jalen Williams, so I'll stick to that.
So for reference, in the lineups I built, I got to 12% of Andre Drummond for DraftKings. That's good contrarian GPP play. Exactly.
I wouldn't base your night around Andre Drummond, but he's good to have on the chance he gets 23 minutes or whatever.
We got some news here, and it is Jimmy Butler officially will play, and then Royce O'Neal is out. Royce O'Neal hasn't been a massive part of the Nets. Like, it could be, you know, a couple of guys here, get a couple minutes, but do you think that's something that really changed anything significantly for you, Royce O'Neal being out?
Not even a little bit, because Cam Thomas is back. So
yeah,
the Nets are just like not in play for me here, really.
Yep. And then that also relates to the question Einsteinium left us before, which is who do we want to get to from Charlotte and Brooklyn? And another reason too, that to me, the answer ends up being for sure from the Charlotte side. Charlotte doesn't have Brandon Miller today. And then on the Nets side of the game, they're getting somebody back in the mix in Cam Thomas, who's a massive usage guy. He's a complete wild card this year. I don't really know what to make of him because he doesn't really have dimensions to his game other than being able to score a lot. Like, he's not a plus defender. He's not a playmaker. But at least what we've seen from him earlier this year, he's been a very good scorer. Now the question just becomes, can he continue to be a guy who shoots like 70% on his long twos? The answer is probably not, but like, what does it regress to? And what does that ultimately do for his value? We'll see going forward. He's going to be back in action for the Nets tonight. We've got a Rocky Raccoon 7. He has just finished the Christmas lights. Good to see the Grinch. He's been very tilted by this. That is, his wife had him hanging up Christmas lights for this Grinchmas party a month ahead of Christmas. It's all hung up and ready to go. Like to see a Rocky Raccoon. Now he's on to making 200 meatballs for the Grinchmas birthday bash. This thing's never ending. He's been working on this party for weeks. It's no good.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Favorite FanDuel GPP plays and what are the news we're waiting on? Yes. So the news we're waiting on is still Wiggins questionable, Wemby questionable, DeRozan questionable, Clarkson questionable. Those are like the really big piece of news that I'm waiting on. Is there anything else you would add to that mix, Matt?
No, not really. I think Wemby news is probably the biggest on the slate because I really have no idea if he's going to play or not. But we shall see.
And then as for my favorite overall plays on FanDuel, so for me, Mike Conley was somebody that I was getting a whole lot of. Gordon Hayward, I get a lot of on FanDuel. So like earlier, we got a question of who's the best play from Charlotte. I know Einstein was asking from a DraftKings perspective. From a FanDuel perspective, the answer for me is Gordon Hayward. And then also just some of the other guys from Minnesota, talking about Karl Anthony Towns, we already hit on Mike Conley there, but then also guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker is really good looking over on FanDuel. And then I love Steph Curry as a pay-up option. $8,900, pretty crazy price tag on Steph Curry, especially when Andrew Wiggins is out and there's additional usage available there. Cap and Nikela wants to know, who is the one guy we're playing in a DK single entry? Matt, is there somebody you like more in a single entry type setting than maybe like a large field type setting for this slate?
I mean, not really. When you put it like that, I like to consider, like, if I'm playing a single entry, I'd have like, well, if you're playing a single entry, you've got 100% of whoever you're playing. So, usually I don't play that different than like multi-entering though. And the fact that like, if I were multi-entering, like I would have, more of the guys I was playing in the single entry, obviously, because I like those guys. And so I'll just say Karl Anthony Towns, like he's going a little bit over owned, but he's still projected to be under 20% owned here. Like that's who I'd be starting my lineups with, if that's the question. I got to go back to like Andre Drummond, though. I know that we talked about him ad nauseum, but I just made the point about Conley and Curry. Drummond's on the opposite end of the spectrum. He's 20% cheaper on DK. I know like what he does is more valuable for FanDuel, but I think Drummond at 3,400 in multi-entry getting over the field, and in single entry, because you're not playing Drummond, hoping he gets 40. You're playing him because of what else it allows you to roster, but he's got upside. So I'm going to go with Towns and Drummond.
Let's see. I'm going to look at some of the exposures I got to on DraftKings relative to what the projected ownership is. And all right, here's one I like for single entry on DraftKings. This is something I like to do a lot when I answer this question that Cap and Nikela leaves us. Is who's a player that I get overweight to the field to in large field tournaments,
right? But
then also is somebody who's not projected for a ton of ownership, so likely going to be lesser owned in single entry, but then also has a path for even more upside. Jeremy Sochan, he makes it into about a third of my initial DraftKings lineups. He's $5,700, which maybe a little bit of sticker shock. We're not used to seeing like $5,700 Jeremy Sochan, but Wemby's questionable. If Wemby is ruled out, you get this scenario where Sochan's going to have to play extra minutes, get him more usage because Wemby's taken on a massive amount of usage in the Spurs offense. So somebody who I'm already overweight to isn't projected for a ton of ownership and has upside to do even more tonight in the potential absence of Wembanyama. Is Sochan somebody who you're getting to or like rostering tonight?
I'm not really getting to him. I like the call out though. Like he's a perfect guy, I think, for the question that was asked, like not getting a lot of love, not like off the reservation, but I like that call quite a bit. The other guy that I wanted to ask you about that I think, again, he's going a little bit over-owned, but I still think that when you're talking about a single entry, he's a really good, nice starting point, building block, however you want to call it. Emmanuel Quickly. Like he's just too cheap on a slate with a lot of guys that are too expensive. So I like Quickly here quite a bit.
Let's see. So Quickly, let me see. Do I have him in lineups first off? Yes, I have a good amount of lineups with Emmanuel Quickly. So I do like Quickly, and he's my most rostered value play who is not from the Timberwolves. Now, with that said, his game starts at 7:30 Eastern time. If we find out that DeRozan's out, if we find out that Wemby is out, the first player who comes down in ownership in my lineups is going to end up being Quickly, right? He takes a haircut as soon as other value players open up. But yeah, as of now, he's my most rostered value player who is not from Minnesota.
I'm with that. And I don't think there's any, like, I think that makes a ton of sense. It's perfectly logical. I will say, if those guys end up getting ruled out and we have a ton more value, it does make me interested in Quickly, like kind of on another level based on what you just said, that I think his ownership falls across the board because other better projected players are going to open up, guys like Alex Caruso, etc. And like, yeah, they're going to play more minutes, but Quickly is much better than all those guys from a fantasy perspective. If this game gets out of hand and he gets extra run, Quickly could break this slate. Again, you're not projecting that, but I like Quickly a lot here. And if those guys get ruled out and other guys become better projected, I just think that he looks more interesting from a tournament perspective.
Knicks fucked up by not giving him a contract extension prior to last
He's good.
He's not good. He's really good. And
yeah,
I think he's to me, he's the second best player on the team behind Jalen Brunson.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think you can say he's better than Randall. Like, I get Randall might be overrated, but like he's still a high level producer. Quickly has not shown that he can do what Randall has done.
Well, the peak of Randall, which was a couple of years ago, and he has like games that are really big, but Randall's efficiency metrics are generally pretty poor, whereas Quickly, super efficient because a lot of his points are coming from threes. He also gets to the free throw line a lot. But yeah, like the peak of Randall is better than what the peak of Quickly's been. But there have been some like shitty Randall years also.
I'm a Julius Randle fan, not going to lie, so I'm biased. I understand that as, are you a Knicks fan?
I was as a kid.
Okay, so not really anymore. Like, I know Knicks fans are really down on Randall.
As they should be. Because so there's also individual instances where there was a game like 2 weeks ago where the Knicks were down. No, it was a tie game. It's a tie game with like 10 seconds left. The Knicks have the ball. Shot clock is winding down. Brunson gets the shot. He misses it. And then Randall wanted to take the shot so he doesn't go back on defense. Yeah. And the Knicks give up the winning bucket. It's like shit like that, where also it's where a lot of his advanced metrics, which these are things that, you know, a lot of gets incorporated into that as well, like individual plays if a player's just taking off. But yeah, like I'm not a massive Randall fan, although he was great a couple of years ago.
It's hard to judge Quickly also, like for the fact that, like you said, he comes off the bench, he doesn't play full starters minutes. Like if he was, like how good would he be? I think he's got more trade value than Randall just because of contracts and all that. But still got to give Randall credit. Like he was an all-star either last year or the year before. Like I know that doesn't mean everything, but it means something.
Yeah. But once again, I'm saying Quickly this year and last year Quickly versus Randall this year and last year. Like I think EPM had Quickly as he was like a 88th percentile player last year. And Randall was like a 60th percentile player.
Interesting. I think the Knicks are foolish not giving Quickly more minutes. Like I get it. Like they need the scoring off the bench, but I think that, I don't know. It's kind of a weird fit with Brunson and Randall. So I'm not sure what they're going to do.
See if we got some super chats in here. I think there might've been some stuff that came through, and yeah, we've got D-Buff. Daniel Buffington says, besides the Wolves centers, who are the top 3 centers for cash on DK? I mean, how many centers are you looking to play today? It can't be the Wolves. You need 3 other centers. You build a lineup with 6 centers tonight. All right. Cash centers. I mean, you still want to be playing, in my opinion, Naz Reid and Karl Anthony Towns in cash. Beyond that, I mean, I don't have like 3 other ones to give out, but I would say Clint Capella and then Zach Collins, because he would look very, very good from a projection standpoint if Wemby doesn't play.
So them, also Vooch, especially if DeRozan's out. Yes. Nick Claxton looks good here. Big men against Charlotte has been a thing forever. And then just on the opposite end, I'm going to call it a GPP center I like a lot. Walker Kessler. I know that he hasn't played huge minutes since returning, but they've gone up every night. He closed the game last night. It was a little bit of garbage time, which I'm actually encouraged to see. He's got massive upside. Like if he starts tonight, which he will at some point, he becomes one of my favorite plays on the slate. Not a cash game guy, but I do think there are a bunch of cash game viable centers. No one that really stands out of the group we talked about, though.
And let's see what else we have here. This is James Magruder, $6,600 or under. Who is the best utility not named Bogdan, and then also best cheap center? My favorite cheap center, I'll go back to the guy I was talking about before. It is Naz Reid today. Like, if we're going cheap at center, Naz Reid is going to be my guy. If we're looking at 6,600 or under utility, but it can't be Bogdanovich. 6,600 or under. Who is around that price point? I'm going to go Zach Collins for now. In utility spot, somebody who already projects decently now, and then potentially Wemby being out, it would be him. You could also, by the way, say Colby White for similar reasons if DeRozan doesn't play. But for now, I'm going to answer Zach Collins.
I dig that. Want to hear something interesting? Andre Drummond is now the 11th highest owned player on the slate. Like,
wow.
I know. Now it's like kind of, there's a lot of guys are funneled in the middle there. Bryce McGowan's is third, Quickly is fifth. Another guy that's right behind Drummond that I like a lot that I wanted to talk and get your perspective on, Moses Moody. I think he looks like an elite value at 4,300 on DraftKings. With those guys out for Golden State, the coach speak around him recently. He's played really well. They need the offense. I like Moody quite a bit here.
I have Moody in a little over 20% of my top DK lineups right before the show. And I assume that if I was to rerun lineups right now, that would actually probably come down a little bit because some of the other value that's opened up. So Moody is somebody who I probably like less than what the field does. I'll see for FanDuel lineups when I have all of that updated here in a second. But he's like another one of those guys who coming into the day was like, all right, he looks decent. But then just better value, I think, is going to continue to open up as we go here. Wemby is in, by the way. We just found out. Wemby is in.
So that takes some of that value out. Now the question becomes Towns versus Wemby. I like Towns more, but the field does as well. So interesting to see how that ownership changes, or if it does now that he's in.
Is Wemby somebody you're going to want to be getting to now that he's in?
I like the idea of getting to him in tournaments over Towns because of the ownership discrepancy, but I personally like Towns more and would rather get different elsewhere. So our tools would say that he's a really, really good pivot off of Towns. I mean, he's almost half his owned with a slightly higher optimal percentage projected for basically the same amount of DraftKings points. Like, looking at the tools, it definitely gets me interested, if nothing else. How about you?
I like Wemby. I think Wemby is somebody to be overweight to. We've seen his immense upside. Maybe a little bit of concern, like, will the Spurs be cautious with his minutes? At the same time, too, coming into the year, everybody assumed like Wemby, the Spurs, going to rest a bunch of games. They've kind of let him rip. I know that earlier in the season, people were like, what's wrong with his minutes? He got into foul trouble in early games. Since then, though, like, he's playing back-to-back. He's playing big minutes in a lot of games. They're letting him play through injuries when he's listed as questionable. So I do think there's maybe a little bit of risk there, but every other time this year we've thought there's risk with Wemby, it kind of hasn't been the case.
Right. And a point you like to make that you're playing tournaments, like you embrace that risk, right? People might not be on him as much because of that risk, which the risk doesn't have anything to do with his upside, as he showed last time out in Denver in a game that they were kind of getting rolled, and he still like produced at a really high level.
Got some more super chats coming in. Yeah, I mean, to me, Wemby, a lot of upside, especially if you guys are playing on FanDuel. He has the potential in the future to just break FanDuel scoring with defensive stats. We're seeing games where it's like 6 steals, 3 blocks. I'm telling you, peak Wemby is going to be a guy who wins Defensive Player of the Year. The Spurs defense is absolute dog shit this year, but once they get more talent around him, those guys develop more. Like, would you be shocked if he's a guy who's like 4 steals or 4 blocks and 2 steals a game at some point?
No, not at all. He could easily be like the leading stock guy we've ever seen, just because of his length and how tall he is and his mobility, etc. How good do you think he'll be? Just more like an overall perspective. I know that question is almost impossible to answer, but do you think he's going to have a LeBron type impact?
I mean, that's hard because then you're saying, like, is he going to be one of the best players of all time? That's right. A ceiling. I don't think it's the most likely scenario. I would be stunned if he isn't somebody who's a high-level all-star that, like, at the very least to me, high-level all-star that's going to be a guy who gets MVP votes at the peak of his career.
Okay, so a guy that you can win a title with is like the
Yes.
medium outcome, median outcome. I agree with that. Like you can never project anyone to be like one of the top 5 players or top 2 players of all time. I'm with you. So yeah, it's exciting to see him. Should be a fun one tonight too against Atlanta.
And let's go ahead and see what else we have here as far as questions go. We've got Sean asking for DK of interest in the first game. Not really. I don't have a ton of interest in the first game.
I have very minimal interest. I didn't really like it, even if guys weren't questionable. We've got guys that are questionable. Low total. Cleveland's healthy. Portland's in an awful spot. Like, no thanks.
Next question that we have here is Jorge Giacomi. Jorge wants to know what are our thoughts on Bryce McGowan's. I think that if you are looking super, super cheap, he's one of the top guys to get to. Now, like Matt said before, if you're in between McGowan's and Drummond, I would lean towards Drummond if it's a utility spot. But overall, I think McGowan's warrants more ownership because of the fact that he's better position eligibility. So McGowan's is somebody who I think he's one of the better punt plays of the night.
Yeah, he is. I guess like my stance on him being bad has not changed, but on him being a very good value on this slate, it's clear that he is. I mean, our tools like him. He's only 3,300. There aren't guys down in that price point that are even going to see the floor. So the fact that he's starting, he's pretty much game script proof. Like he could walk into like a couple threes and a couple steals. And then all of a sudden, if he does anything else, be a guy you need at that price point. So yeah, I get it. Like I'm not going out of my way to play him, but he certainly looks like the best, like dirt cheap guy you can go to by far besides Drummond.
Now we've got Sam Van Dam. Sam asking us, is someone from support available to answer my email? Yes, I guess. let me News God, are you in the chat watching right now? Sam Van Dam has an email that he would like answered. I can't answer your email right now, but I've got hopefully News God is watching. Now, if not, I'll send
You
him
know he needs that answer, that question answered if he's typing it into a live chat show.
Yeah, I wish there was a way that I could answer the email for you. By the way, we just got news here. By the way, Jordan Clarkson will not play tonight, so no Jordan Clarkson. That is going to open up some value here from the Utah Jazz. I'm going to give projections a second to update here. I want to make sure that we've answered all of the super chats here. I think the one from Sam was the last one. And yeah, by the way, if you guys haven't done it yet, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then also, I'm a lot more involved in our betting stuff these days. I'm in our Odd Shopper Discord now. We have an expert picks page on Odd Shopper. I get to tag a few of my bets and throw them up there. So if you guys want to get some betting access to me and ask me questions in the Discord about betting, sign up for Odd Shopper. There's a link below. Less than $50 a month for our Odd Shopper. And you're getting everything now. You're getting access to our Discord, getting access to our market-based betting model up on Odd Shopper, and also some of our experts picks that get tagged over on Odd Shopper. It's a little bit of something for everybody, and is less than $50 a month. So if you guys want to check out Odd Shopper, there's a link for that below. You can also use the promo code Greg, which gets you 20% off when you sign up at Odd Shopper. But Jordan Clarkson is out, and we just found out that Agbaji is going to be starting in place of Clarkson. Who's looking better from Utah with Clarkson out of the mix now, Matt?
Everyone, but mostly Colin Sexton. I gotta say Sexton. He's priced up a little bit, but no Markkanen, no Clarkson. Like he's gonna have the ball in his hands. I could see him playing 30 minutes off the bench. John Collins is a little bit interesting. These guys are pricey though, so like they've done a good job of pricing up Utah. Keontae George looks good. They all look better. No one becomes a must in my mind. How about you?
Yeah, I'm going to let me look at some of the pricing of these guys also. Like my initial reaction was Clarkson was going to be Sexton in place of Clarkson. Agbaji starting doesn't really move me a ton. Agbaji is terrible as a fantasy producer. He's very much relying on will he pick up a couple of defensive stats and knock down his threes. The answer is sometimes, but usually not. So I'm not really like super inclined to play him. But if we do go ahead and look at some of the other players on the team now, like there's just a little bit more usage to go around to everybody. So let's see. Jordan, can you pull up? Do we have the projections updated so we could pull that up on screen? I'm also trying to figure out, like, do I want to try to quickly run another set of lineups here or not quite yet? All right. We'll be up in a second. And when it is, we'll pull it up here on screen. News just came out, and Agbaji is going to be starting. Is there anything you think that, I know we're still waiting for the projections update, Matt, but is there anything you think you'll be prioritizing from Utah?
I like Sexton a lot. I mean, I wish he were starting, but they're going to need him off the bench. So he closed last night also. I like a couple guys off the bench there. I like Walker Kessler and Colin Sexton. Risky because they're coming off the bench. No like ultimate priorities though, just because of, like you said, Agbaji, no thanks. And like the other guys are priced up.
I think the one that makes for the most interesting contrarian play, and you brought it up over the course of the show, is Walker Kessler, because he's somebody we know is a really good fantasy producer. He's going to see his minutes ramped up at some point. I don't know that today has to be the day. It could be though. And if it is, you're going to want to have Walker Kessler for the game that he sees the increased minutes.
Yes.
More so than the game after he sees the increased minutes.
Amen to that. I mean, that's like DFS 101 type stuff. I couldn't agree with you more. And his minutes are increasing every single game. He's still priced at a point where there's a lot of meat on the bone for his upside. He looked good last night closing. Like I like Kessler a lot here as a guy with, I mean, we've seen it with him last year, a couple times this year with 50-point DK point upside. So I like him a lot.
All right, let's hammer out some of these questions that have come into Discord here. And this first one is from Warren, who is Boss Monkey. Let's see, what is this name in here? Warren is Boss Monkey. Where did it go away? Oh, here. Boss Monkey 26 wants to know favorite point guard option tonight. On DraftKings, my favorite point guard option is Trae Young. On FanDuel, my favorite point guard option is Mike Conley / Steph Curry, depending what price range you're looking at. How about for you, Matt? Favorite point guard on DK tonight?
I'm going to go quickly.
JEW, favorite pay-up options tonight for single entry on DK and FanDuel. Karl-Anthony Towns on both sites, but then also Trae Young on DK, Steph Curry on FanDuel in addition to Karl-Anthony Towns. And I believe your answer was Cat, right, Matt?
It is, but another guy that we haven't talked about at all that I like a lot in those type of contests that's going to get no ownership is LeBron James. Should have a competitive game here against OKC. Our tools like him a lot. He's got an 8% chance to be optimal, which isn't high, but only 4% owned. LeBron is a guy I just have known for obviously being in Cleveland, et cetera, et cetera. Like he's for somehow, some way been better on back-to-backs a lot of his career. Not worried about that at all with him. They got the fourth quarter off last night against the Pistons, who are somehow worse than Memphis, but that's another story for another day. So I'm going to call out LeBron there, but Towns is the guy if I have to choose.
Next question here is from Einsteinium. He knows I mentioned Trae is my favorite payoff option on DK. How do I feel about Bam? I find Bam to be a little hard to get to tonight on DraftKings. Like I have some lineups that I built before that he showed up, but he's $9,500 on DK. There's other players I prefer to get to on the high end to Bam.
Really, really hard to get to Bam here with Butler in. Bam's been amazing this season. I mean, he's playing like, right behind Jokic and Embiid as like the top center in basketball, but he's now priced like it too. And with Butler in, he's just a tournament play. That's it.
Core DK plays, opposite EXO is asking. So for core DK plays, I mean, it's got to be the Minnesota guys, Naz Reid, Kyle Anderson, Troy Brown, Karl-Anthony Towns. Trae Young is also somebody I like a good amount. Quickly was another one that Matt and I have talked about a good amount. Any boast you would add as a core play for tonight? I'll add Vooch if DeRozan's rolled out.
I like Moses Moody at his price, but I do like the Minnesota guys more. And if I were thinking of like who I would need to build around, it'd be the Minnesota guys.
Now we've got a question here from the Black Mamba. Does anything change with Chris Paul being out? No, he wasn't expected to play though, and neither was Wiggins. Like these are guys who weren't expected to play for a little while. So it's not like this is like new news, like Wiggins or anything is out tonight.
No, I will say a guy that you kind of talked about it earlier with Naz Reid at the beginning of the show. Draymond is a guy that could see a big uptick with Chris Paul out, just because we've seen him play that point forward role. No Paul, no Gary Payton, no Wiggins. Like I like the guys in the Golden State rotation that are going to get minutes. They're just not in a great spot. And they're priced accordingly. So I think you can choose any one of those guys. Draymond is the guy that first comes to mind, though.
Some super chats here. First from Frankie Lofton. Cash plays at each position on DK, and then thank you. Yeah, let's go back and forth and see who we go with cash plays for DK at each position. And at point guard, I'm going to go with Quickly, who I have a feeling you're probably going to answer there as well.
Same.
Shooting guard for me, I'm going to go with Troy Brown here.
I'm going to go Moody, but I don't think either one is. And in cash games, Brown's getting a lot more ownership. Yeah. So give me Brown there too, I guess. You just want to be safer with the ownership.
Small forward, I'll go Kyle Anderson.
Same.
Power forward, Karl Anthony Towns. Yeah, I know it's a lot of Timberwolves guys.
I mean, honestly, like I don't even. It's more like Naz Reid and Towns at power forward center. I think even though there are some good center options, you can play one of those guys at center here.
Yeah, and then center, I'll go Clint Capella as well. Naz Reid, another one. But yeah, load up on the Timberwolves in cash today.
Yeah, for sure.
What's that? We're answering it right now. No, we're answering Frankie Lofton's super chat. What is it? Pete Shepard. Oh, yeah, we're answering all these right now. But yeah, I'll hit on this right now. I want to know favorite for a single entry on FanDuel, Brogdon or Brunson. That is Brunson for me over Brogdon. Yeah, I've got more of Brunson. And then as for the next super chat, we got Fantasy Guru 76. Must play shooting guard and value small forward on FanDuel. All right, must play shooting guard. Must play shooting guard. I'm going to go Gordon Hayward, who also kind of fits the other part of best value small forward.
Right.
And the answer is Gordon Hayward on both for me. I think Gordon
shooting guard's weak on FanDuel, and you have to play two of them. So Hayward is definitely one of them.
Hield also kind of fits the bill as a value shooting guard. Moody, I like Moody more on FanDuel than I do on DraftKings. I think he's hard to get away from there. Cedric A. Phillips wants to know why no mention of Kuminga with Wiggins out. Because I don't expect him to start. I would feel differently if Kuminga ends up starting, though. But as of right now, like we've seen other days where the Warriors have been shorthanded. They generally haven't given Kuminga minutes this year. Could that change if he starts tonight? Sure. But if we go through and look at all of Kuminga's games this year, he has one start. In that start, he played 26 minutes. And that's one of only a few games he's played north of 20 minutes. I know there's no Wiggins, there's no Chris Paul. So we'll see what this starting lineup ultimately ends up being. But at least as of now, with the information we have, I'm not really getting too much of Kuminga. I'd
be shocked if it's Kuminga here. He's a big, Wiggins is not playing big right now. So it's like the smaller guys are going to be the guys that see an uptick in my mind. And like you said, they've been reluctant to give him big minutes anyways. I just want to say your buddy Hield call out definitely looks like the guy on FanDuel that's more than playable. Talked about like the salary comparisons. He's 32% cheaper on FanDuel than DK. He's way too expensive on DK, but he's probably way too cheap on FanDuel as well.
Next question that we have here is Cleveland 27 wanted to know DK Capella thoughts. I like Capella. I think he's somebody to play a lot of here. Einstein, I'm just going to get these really quick out right before we get to lock. Einstein, any love for PJ Washington? Not really. Tim Lee, flag plant for me today. Let's see. What is somebody who's like a flag? Mike Conley. I'm playing a ton of Mike Conley. And then Iron Maiden 2. Thoughts on Kawhi? He feels underpriced and is playing really good ball. I always get concerned about Kawhi on the tail end of back-to-backs. He is somebody who historically usually rests on them, or sometimes the Clippers will be cautious. Last time they played a back-to-back, he was pretty flat in it. And I know this is, a little bit more narrative-based than what I would typically talk about here, but Kawhi, I only have 10% of him for today. Hard for me to prioritize him with it being the back-to-back and everything else going on there with the Clippers and just inconsistent who's going to be the guy on a night-to-night basis. But that's going to do it for us today. We've made it to lock. Don't go anywhere. Right after us, we've got the NFL Live Before Lock show that's going to be with Eric Lindquist and Neil Orfield breaking down the football Thursday night game. So check out those guys. Thank you very much for watching. Good luck with all your lineups. And Matt and I will be back here tomorrow to break down another slate. Peace out.